fucking Saturday morning. It's Saturday, right? Ah, fuck it. We'll be doing a little bit of live streaming, and bear with me, we're going to be doing a little bit of OSHA training again today. I have not completed my course yet.
Injection, puncture wound. Chemicals can enter your body through penetration by needles and other sharp objects contaminated with hazardous materials.
Chemicals can be a health hazard, which means exposure may cause health problems. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, identifies an exposure to hazardous chemicals as
fucking making a mess here.
Let's take a closer look at what each term means.
Drag each tab to this content window to view each topic. You will not be able to proceed to the next slide until you have viewed all topics. Acute exposure is a short term of brief exposure that may create an immediate health hazard. An example is passing out from exposure to carbon monoxide. Chronic exposure is a repeated or prolonged exposure over months or years that may bring about slowly developing symptoms. These exposures do not cause immediate, obvious harm, and a person may not see, feel, or smell the danger. Effects, however, may be permanent. An example is developing cancer from a long-term exposure to asbestos or lead.
That's bullshit. He fucking hit me.
In addition to health hazards, chemicals can also present a potential physical hazard in the workplace. A physical hazard occurs when the physical properties of a chemical create hazards, such as fires, explosions, or dangerous chemical reactions. Exposure to chemicals that are health hazards or physical hazards can lead to serious consequences, such as illnesses, injuries, and even death.
Since the potential for harm from hazardous chemical exposure is so great, laws which are intended to protect you have been put in place. The Right to Know law gives you the legal right to know about all the hazardous chemicals that you may be exposed to at work, the specific hazards associated with those chemicals, and what to do to protect yourself.
The official name of the Right to Know law is the Hazard Communication Standard, HCS, developed and regulated by OSHA. This regulation has requirements for manufacturers, importers, and distributors of chemicals, as well as for employers.
In the HCS, chemical manufacturers, importers, and distributors are required to provide standardized hazard information by way of safety data sheets and labels on containers. Additionally, the standard requires employers to develop, implement, and maintain a written hazard communication program, which is commonly called a HazCom program.
Oh, what? No, that's bullshit. I thought that was part of it. Alright, let's try that again.
Before we continue, let's review what we've covered so far about chemical safety and the Right to Know law. Safety is very important when working with or around chemicals. Chemicals may enter the body through breathing, ingestion, absorption, or injection. Acute or chronic exposure to hazardous chemicals can cause health problems. Additionally, some chemicals can cause physical hazards, such as fires, explosions, and other serious incidents. Under OSHA's HCS, it is your right to know what hazardous chemicals are in your work area and how you can work safely around those chemicals.
I'm not even sure what type of weapon I was supposed to be able to use. Ooh, we got a trophy.
Let's see what you remember about routes of entry. In this exercise, you will be shown examples of different ways chemicals can enter your body. As each image is shown, drag the correct answer to the answer box to check your answer. Image 1. Air is breathed in through the nose and into the lungs.
Yes, that is typically how oxygen is ingested. Oops.
Correct. That is an example of inhalation. Image 2. A drop of liquid falls onto your arm.
That would be absorption.
Right. That is an example of absorption. Image 3. You pick up a vial of chemicals, then pick up a piece of food you intend to eat with the same hand.
You know, I'm gonna have to refer to the picture and attempt to go grab my car here. Look at that scrap we totally missed. Ingested.
Correct. That is an example of ingestion. Image 4. You grab a bag full of trash and cut your hand on a piece of glass that is sticking out. You're correct. That is an example of injection. The sharp object could puncture your skin.
I'll never forget what my
Well
dad said
done.
to me on my
You have
fifth
answered
birthday.
all the questions in this knowledge check. Click the next button to advance to the next slide. As you have learned, you have the right to be safe in your workplace. The Right to Know law requires your employer to have a written HAZCOM program. This program must, at a minimum, include a list of all hazardous chemicals known to be in the workplace, a safety data sheet for each hazardous chemical, a warning label on each container of a hazardous chemical, and a training plan to communicate hazard information to you and other employees.
A list of hazardous chemicals known to be in the workplace, a safety data sheet for each hazardous material, warning label, and training.
SDSs and labels are two important components of a HAZCOM program. We'll look at both in detail, but before we do, let's examine the high-level differences between the two. An easy way to remember the differences is that an SDS is a document that each chemical manufacturer, distributor, or importer must provide for each hazardous chemical. It contains detailed information such as the properties of each chemical, the physical, health, and environmental health hazards, protective measures, and safety precautions for handling, storing, and transporting the chemical. SDSs are typically documents that are stored in the workspace, but are likely not attached to the container containing the chemical. Labels provide information regarding the hazards of the chemical in question, but their physical size limits the amount of information they contain. Labels are typically affixed to the container of the hazardous chemical. Click the next button to continue. For the definition below, drag and drop the answer that best matches the description to the drop spot. This provides information regarding the hazards of the chemical in question, but its physical size limits the amount of information they contain. It is typically affixed to the container of the hazardous chemical. Correct. This definition refers to a label since it provides information regarding the hazards of the chemical in question, but its physical size limits the amount of information they contain. It is typically affixed to the container of the hazardous chemical. Click the next button to continue.
Tell me what to do, devil woman.
Let's look in more detail at SDSs. An SDS is designed to identify the hazards of a chemical and explain how you can protect yourself from those hazards.
Your employer must have an SDS for every hazardous chemical in the workplace. The SDS for chemicals in your work area must be fully accessible and available to you the entire time you are at work. For example, they can be kept in a binder or on a computer as long as the employees have immediate access to the information without leaving their work area when needed, and a backup is available for rapid access to the SDS in the case of a power outage or other emergency. OSHA requires each SDS to be completely legible, updated when new information is available, and printed in English. Other languages may be provided, but English must be provided. The HCS requires new SDSs to be in a uniform, consistent format and include the section numbers, the headings, and associated information under the headings.
The HCS requires SDSs to be in a uniform format and include the section numbers, the headings, and associated information under the headings. OSHA will not be enforcing Section 12, 14, or Section 15, since other agencies regulate this information. Click each card to learn more about the components of an SDS. You will not be able to proceed to the next slide until you have viewed all cards. Section 1. Identification includes product identifier, manufacturer or distributor name, address, phone number, emergency phone number, recommended use, restrictions on use. Section 2. Hazards identification includes all hazards regarding the chemical, required label elements. Section 3. Composition and/or information on ingredients includes information on chemical ingredients, trade secret claims. Section 4. First aid measures includes important symptoms and/or effects, acute, delayed, require treatment. Section 4. First aid measures includes important symptoms and/or effects, acute, delayed, require treatment.
I'm at the coordinates. Where the hell are you?
I knew I could count on you,
People in the street now like it's nothing.
Section 5. Firefighting measures lists suitable extinguishing techniques, equipment, chemical hazards from fire.
What the fuck?
Section 6, Accidental Release Measures, lists emergency procedures, protective equipment, proper methods of containment, and cleanup. Section 7, Handling and Storage, lists precautions for safe handling and storage, including incompatibilities. Section 8, Exposure Controls and/or Personal Protection, lists OSHA's permissible exposure limits, PELs, threshold limit values, TLVs, appropriate engineering controls, personal protective equipment, PPE. Section 9, Physical and Chemical Properties, lists the chemical's characteristics. Section 10, Stability and Reactivity, lists chemical stability and possibility of hazardous reactions. Section 11, Toxicological Information, includes routes of exposure, related symptoms, acute and chronic effects, numerical measures of toxicity. Section 16, Other Information, includes the date of preparation or last revision.
Before proceeding to the next slide, click the link to review the Hazard Communication Safety Data Sheets Quick Card. You will not be able to click the next button until you have clicked the link. Click the next button to continue. Let's practice locating information on an SDS. Click the thumbnail of the SDS on the right and locate the information that will assist you. Drag the correct answer into the answer box to check your answer. Question 1. Who is the manufacturer of the material listed on the data sheet? That's correct. ABC Company is the manufacturer of this material. Section 1. Identification of the substance or mixture and of the supplier. Question 2. What chemical is listed as the hazardous ingredient? That's incorrect. The name of the chemical is propane. This information can be located in Section 1. Identification of the substance or mixture and of the supplier. Question 3. If exposure occurs, what is an acute effect of propane? That's incorrect. An acute effect of propane is anesthetic effects at high concentrations. This information may be located in Section 4, First Aid Measures. Question 4. When working with propane in situations of oxygen deficiency, unknown exposure concentrations, or situations that are immediately dangerous to life or health, what should you always utilize? That's correct. When working with propane in situations of oxygen deficiency, unknown exposure concentrations, or situations that are immediately dangerous to life or health, you should always use a NIOSH-approved self-contained breathing apparatus, SCBA. This information may be located in Section 8, Exposure Controls, Personal Protection. Well done. You have answered all the questions in this knowledge check. Click the next button to advance to the next slide. The HCS requires that each container holding a hazardous chemical have a warning label. The warning label must be easily seen and must provide the identity of the chemical along with the appropriate warnings for employee protection.
You should always read the label before you use any chemical. There are many different types of warning labels. Let's look at a few.
Each label must contain the following information: name, address, and telephone number, product identifier, signal words, hazard statements, precautionary statements, and pictograms. Click the next button to continue. Question 1. For the area identified, choose the label component that best describes the part indicated by dragging the answer to the drop spot. That's right. The word warning on the label acts as the signal word. Question 2. For the area identified, choose the label component that best describes the part indicated by dragging the answer to the drop spot. That's right. The symbol is called a pictogram and alerts users to the chemical hazards to which they may be exposed. In the next section, we'll look in more detail at what each of the pictograms symbolize. Well done! You have answered all the questions in this knowledge check. Click the next button to advance to the next slide. The shipping department at Great Chemical Company has printed this label. As you are looking at the label, you notice that it is incomplete. You need to tell the shipping department what information is missing. From the list below, drag and drop the required element onto the drop spot.
It's not murder. It was me or them.
The Oasis Corporate Industrial Park has suffered damage.
Great job! The signal word, in this case, danger, was missing. Well done! You have answered all the questions in this knowledge check. Click the next button to advance to the next slide.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to call her there, folks. Half hour viewer comment.